Hello, welcome to our breakout session today. We're glad you can join us for preventing data downtime with effective data governance, observability, and quality strategies. I'm excited to welcome you and introduce our speakers, Ken Butler, Senior Director of Product Management, and Scott Arnett, also Senior Director of Product Management at Precisely. Before we jump into the session today, we have a few housekeeping items to cover. First, we want to make sure you know the session is being recorded and it will be available to you afterward. And we want to let you know that if you must step away, do not pause the session for your best viewing experience. We also would love to hear from you. We'd like you to ask questions. Use the Q&A tab to communicate with the speakers. We will have time to answer questions at the end of the session, but please feel free to enter your questions at any time. We do want you to get in touch with us. You can use the demo, chat, and content buttons. Those are available both in the left menu as well as below the session details. And provide us feedback. We'd love to improve and know how we did. So use the thumbs up button below to give us feedback, or you can respond later to a post-event notification. So with those few housekeeping items, I want to go ahead and kick off the session, and I'm going to turn it over to Scott Arnett. Scott?
Thanks, Julie. Thanks everybody for joining today. I'd like to start our presentation today maybe with a bit of a scenario here that I believe most of you could probably identify with. If like it Precisely here, you have a lot of reports, dashboards, and other items that you kind of rely on a day-to-day basis to drive your business, whether those are sales reports or marketing reports or operational reports or reports from your support organization. There's probably a lot of things that you and your business rely on in order to make daily decisions, to discuss through issues and identify problems as you move throughout the day. It become kind of very much a key tool, if you will, as you conduct your business. But inevitably, there's always something that can possibly happen with those. And see if this is familiar with you, is that you have a report. It's, let's say, a sales dashboard, and an executive in reviewing the data that's on there with their team suddenly realizes that the data, for whatever reason, appears to be off. Maybe it looks like the same data they saw the day before, or maybe the calculations are just way off the scale and are not really at all in line with expectations and so forth. So it starts to raise questions, not just about that particular report, but potentially, what the reports historically have been like and the decisions that are made off of that and so forth. And it kicks off a bit of a scramble, if you will. People trying to figure out what happened to the report, where did it fail. What you realize is that a lot of these in dashboards and reports are very reliant on the processes that went in to help to build them. The data that travels all the way from the source systems through various ETL and data quality processes and other types of automation before they finally land on that dashboard. It can be pretty daunting, particularly if you consider that in a lot of organizations, the data can be coming from multiple places and so forth. So it really becomes kind of an issue when you start to identify a problem, trying to trace back and figure out what went wrong, and to do so in a kind of a timely manner. Now, today we want to talk a little bit about data downtime. And like in the scenario, data downtime occurs when your organization no longer has direct access to accurate data that they need in order to make timely decisions. So when those reports go down, and the organization is no longer able to function off of those reports, that's our definition of data downtime. And the focus really is on how do we address that, and what can we do in order to ensure that we minimize those kinds of impacts through the organization. So imagine if you actually had the ability to prevent these types of issues from happening. You had the ability to identify problems before they started to appear on your dashboards and reports. You would be able to see where the source of an issue is occurring, maybe address it before it has an impact, and take action that would help you in ensuring that you don't have an excessive amount of downtime or any downtime at all. And really, the goal for this and what we want to discuss today and as we proceed is to try to be proactive. Avoid being reactive to the problems. Understand the landscape of your data. Understand the pipelines, the ongoing health of those pipelines, how you monitor and report on data quality, and understanding things such as ownership and other aspects of your data, so that as problems start to occur, you know where the problem is happening, what to do to address it, and how to keep things up and running. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague Ken. And Ken.
All right, thank you, Scott. So data-driven organizations today rely on accurate data, and it needs to always be available for timely decision-making. The example that Scott described in the beginning of our session is a classic example. A report has inaccurate or stale data. And we've all been there before and know what happens next. And the reactive approach sounds like the following. We try to identify quickly which BI report of the hundreds or thousands that are available is the culprit. We send emails and messages to determine where the data is coming from and who owns it. And we try to get an understanding of what's happening to the data during its journey. Where did it come from? What happened to it? And can I trust it? And finally, we dig into the data to determine which fields or rows of data are causing the report to be inaccurate. So root cause analysis can be a difficult problem to work through, given how many people are now responsible for working with the data. And if you take this example and apply it to your own organization, would you know the answers to any of the previous questions? Data-driven organizations rely on accurate data, but more importantly, they rely on data stewards, data engineers, and data analysts all working together. Data stewards are responsible for assuring quality and trust in the data. They create standard definitions for the organization to follow and maintain a consistent use of data across the organization. If you want to understand data ownership and how the data is being used, find a data steward. Data engineers are responsible for ensuring data is accessible to all stakeholders and create the infrastructure that stores, transforms, and moves the data. The data engineer's focus is on the timely and accurate delivery of data. And finally, the data analyst is another consumer of data, but further down the data's life cycle. They ensure the data is accurate and of high quality, available and prepared in a format ready for reporting or analytics. All three have different roles and responsibilities and need to work together to prevent data downtime. Nothing happens in a silo anymore within organizations that are trying to be data-driven. So preventing data downtime is essentially an ongoing process. And today we're going to be focusing on the preparation of the data here, the identification and remediation of data. It's a cycle that starts with the preparation phase, and this is where data governance comes in. And we'll discuss this in more detail in the next slide. And data governance essentially helps set the foundation for preventing data downtime. The main goal of this phase is to essentially understand your data landscape, and the people involved. You don't need to boil the ocean when it comes to understanding your data. The goal here is to identify the critical data based on business goals and objectives. Generally, around 5% of data is deemed impactful to strategic business objectives, so the focus should be here. It's less about the data that you have and more about the data that you need. This seems counterintuitive, but to have the biggest impact, you need to identify critical data based upon business goals and objectives. In the keynote yesterday, we had a data governance customer, Perigo, that first focused their data governance efforts on operational data. And we're now moving on to data specific for analytics projects. So they had an initial goal in mind, a strategic business objective, and they continue to mature within their data governance process here. And high quality operational data is strategically important and required before any type of decisions can be made leveraging analytics. And next comes ownership and process discipline to help you answer all those questions when you're in react mode. Think back to the problem that we're trying to prevent. How do we know who's responsible for the report and the data? Who and what has touched it along the way? And how can we be sure of the quality of the data that has been delivered? All of these questions can easily be answered by the due diligence that's needed during the preparation phase of the cycle, which identifies ownership and responsibilities for data. Scott?
Yeah, and understanding that landscape, I think, also goes a long way, as you were mentioning just there, around identifying where there could be potential issues and the pipelines or the areas where things could potentially go wrong. And that becomes a big part of kind of the next phase, if you will, in preventing the downtime, which is being able to identify where the weak points are, if you will, in your data pipeline, and setting observations on those areas such that you can actually monitor them for ongoing issues and so forth. So being able to view the data as it's transformed through your pipeline, from the source system through its various steps into the final data presentation that you're using in your reports, to be able to validate that it adheres to the business rules that you have set up for it, that it's consistent in terms of the volume of data that you're being processed, that values are staying within or not trending out of areas where they might present a problem in upstream reporting, and setting up alerts and triggers that can monitor the data on a day-to-day basis and report back to you if it starts to see a trend that could indicate some kind of an issue. And then, of course, as you identify those issues, being able to take action to remediate, to be able to identify anomalies in the data, to be able to take actions to address those issues, whether it's fixing a standardization issue or a quality issue in your data, ensuring that you've got proper addressing or geocodes or enrichment type information attached to the data. All of those kind of things are steps that can be taken in order to help improve the process before it becomes impactful downstream, and also help ensure that you can get a better understanding of the nature of the problem and make sure that the issue is routed to the appropriate person who has to take a look and resolve the particular issue. So I think all the way through, linking these pieces together is a big part of how you start to proactively deal with these data downtime types of issues. And it's not just a one-step process. It's not something where I do this once, I set all this up, and I get going, and it kind of takes care of itself. Really digging into this and being proactive, your data changes on a regular basis. The nature of the reports that you're running changes on a regular basis. Being able to continually evaluate the environment, add new observations into the environment to identify issues in your pipeline, add new remediation processes to deal with an expanding group of business rules. That's kind of an ongoing process and needs to be managed on a regular iterative basis.
So this multi-phase approach to preventing data downtime really relies on people, processes, and technology. And that's what data governance does, is it brings together people, processes, and technology to help drive outcomes for business objectives. The last two slides were entirely about this, and we've got you covered on the technology side of things. Remember, data governance isn't about governance. There's an explicit purpose for the business and the desired outcome. Managing risk and compliance, accelerating decisions through analytics, or increasing operational efficiencies are the main drivers for governance that we see. However, 4 out of 5 organizations, or 80%, fail to deliver on their governance outcomes. 65% of data citizens don't know how governance impacts their role, and 74% of data leaders struggle to calculate the ROI of data governance programs. So if any of these statistics resonate with you, you're not alone. A little over 70% of organizations haven't clearly identified a data governance strategy, identified an executive champion, or started collaboration between the business and IT. And these three main areas are the leading indicators of a successful data governance program. It's very hard to drive and create a data governance program organically. And so with that, you essentially need process discipline from the time data is created to when the data is consumed and everywhere in between. This is exactly how you deliver trusted data. By understanding the data supply chain, which helps you answer all the questions when a report has stale or inaccurate data. You know who to go to, and you understand exactly the data the report is using. People need to be aligned for accountability and definitions of standards to ensure there's consistency across relevant business processes. The goal here is to identify these standards for consistency to make sure that data is being leveraged in a standard way across the business. And finally, technology, which is the data governance solution, is used to essentially tie everything together. So in the keynote yesterday, Eric and the panel talked to Drexel University and the LeBeau College of Business. And this is a report that was put together, which will be available, I believe, in June. And it found that 57% of survey respondents indicate that governance programs have added value for their organization by generating a higher quality of data, analytics, and insights. Now, on the previous slide, I mentioned analytics is one of 3 strategic use cases that we see. The other 2 being managing risk and compliance, along with increasing operational efficiencies. And the main reason that analytics initiatives have a broader adoption when it comes to data governance is due to the fact that advanced analytics and AI initiatives require a tremendous amount of data, and that data needs to be trusted, governed, and understood. Storage is cheaper, the number of data sources that are critical to your business continue to expand, and the amount of data that impacts the business goals of the company will grow from 5% to 10% to 25%, and so on, year over year. These initiatives all require data that is understandable, easy to find, and is trusted. This is where those words like data literacy and data democratization really become important. They aren't just buzzwords. Each of these concepts enable you and your organization to shift from data as a team asset to data as an organizational asset.
And as part of the process that we were talking about before, there's data quality and observability. The quality component dealing with the state of the data, its ability to, or its compliance, if you will, to business rules and expectations downstream, checking both at the source system and along the pipeline to ensure that you're getting the type of data and the quality of data that you need to drive the processes and reports, again, that your business is relying on. A rather newer concept that we've introduced through in our suite is this concept of data observability. So observability kind of takes the data quality conversation to a whole new level. Whereas with traditional data quality, I'm kind of measuring the data at the source and at each stage along the way. Observability gives me a way to kind of monitor in a much more real-time fashion, looking not just for its adherence to business rules, but also for trends within the data, ensuring things such as that volume stays at a consistent level from load to load or from process to process from day to day, also to help ensure that values that are within a field are not trending in a direction that may lead to a problem somewhere down the road. So this kind of insight, if you will, driven into the pipeline, and using that then to drive alerts, to drive processes and other things off the back end of that, which will help you identify issues, help you make sure that those are routed to the people who can address them, and even start to anticipate problems, if you will, before they actually cause an issue downstream. Now, all of these capabilities in total are certainly important to have. A lot of organizations will have a data quality process. A lot of organizations will have some kind of a governance process. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of companies out there that are starting to evaluate data observability and how it adds to the overall integrity of the streams of data that you process on a day in, day out basis. But it is also kind of important to understand how these things need to act in concert with each other. Being able to leverage governance to help define the business rules that are going to drive your data quality process, to be able to tie your observability to data quality in a way that you can maybe even start to automate reactions to certain types of issues as they come up, all requires that this kind of operate on a common backbone of information about your organization, about your data, and so forth, that allow it to kind of leverage each other in order to effectively give you a platform that can help reduce instances of data downtime.
So at Precisely, we had defined data integrity as data with maximum accuracy, consistency, and context for confident business decision making. Every journey to data integrity is unique based upon the business, the data, and the desired outcome. The modular, interoperable data integrity suite contains everything you need to deliver accurate, consistent, and contextual data for your business, wherever and whenever it's needed. And the themes that we've been focusing on for the suite are an enhanced user experience to provide a seamless experience across every function, friendly to both business and technical users, intelligence and automation to streamline and accelerate workflows, connectivity and interoperability with our customers' technology ecosystems, meaning that we go where the data is, and finally, a core foundation of suite service capabilities to ensure optimal efficiency, performance, and security. And today we're focusing on data observability, governance, and data quality, but the data integrity suite has many other capabilities. Data integration is used to break down silos by quickly building data pipelines. Geo-addressing is used to verify standardized and geocode addresses. Spatial analytics to derive and visualize spatial relationships hidden in your data. And finally, to complete the horizontal line here, data enrichment to enrich your business data with expertly curated data sets. And the focus here is preventing data downtime. And data observability, data governance, and data quality all complement each other within the data integrity suite, enabling an integrated and seamless user experience. It's crucial to have these capabilities integrated together to work hand in hand in order to prevent data downtime. And as I'm sure you can imagine, when these capabilities are locked in silos, there are a host of negative consequences. But when they're integrated together, you get powerful synergies. Proactively preventing data downtime requires an understanding of the framework and processes in place to understand ownership and responsibilities. You don't have to have governance tied, if you don't have governance tied directly to data quality, then data downtime issues will continue to linger and continue to impact real-time decision-making. So defining ownership and understanding the data's journey leads to quick remediation of data downtime issues. And remediating data quality issues and ensuring accurate and consistent data within your ecosystem is paramount. You can't build trust without quality data. Ensuring data quality and data observability results are available to all stakeholders ensures the delivery of accurate data. There's no guessing. And all three capabilities essentially need to work seamlessly together to impact the life cycle of data from preparation to observation to remediation. So Scott started the presentation about little earlier and kind of focused on a key use case that happens or has happened to all of us. Some report a member of the executive leadership team is reviewing and there's inaccurate or stale data. And a lot of organizations are locked in a way of executing a reactive approach to this. But when you combine the synergies between data governance, data quality, and data observability, you can become a lot more proactive. And that's really going back and identifying the different steps to create these synergies across all the different people that are working together in order to prepare and understand your data's ecosystem, being able to identify and observe data quality and data observability issues within the process, and finally being able to remediate all of the issues that were found, but being able to do that quicker. And the goal here is being able to trust in the data that's being delivered and being able to do that whenever and wherever it's needed. And with that, Julie, we have some time set aside for Q&A.
Great. Thank you guys for all the great information. And to the audience, I just want to remind you to go ahead and submit your questions in the Q&A panel, and we will start to address all your questions. So we do have a couple so far. Ken, I think this is a good one for you. How do you recommend that we identify our critical data?
Critical data elements. So it's a good question. I think it goes back to being able to understand the purpose of governance and being able to tie that to strategic goals and objectives. And so if the first part of this cycle that Scott and I talked about is the preparation phase, and within that phase, you're really trying to understand your data ecosystem. But you don't need to understand your entire data ecosystem. That's essentially boiling the ocean. So understand the data that you need to have in order to get to some type of business objective. If it's being able to manage risk and compliance, what are the strategic sources that have the most risk when it comes to uncovering personally identifiable information? If it's analytics, what data is being used to drive those analytics projects and how will those be governed? And if it's increasing operational efficiencies, you want to have a better understanding of your operational data within your organization. So really work backwards from the goal and the objective and understand what data you need for those, and then do the assessment on the critical data elements that will impact those upstream.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. Scott, here's one for you. Can we use our existing data quality tool but still use this new data observability solution?
Yes, you can. So within our suite, the data observability product is a bit standalone in terms of its ability to be used with other tools. Obviously, it provides a lot of value in terms of being able to attach it to data targets within your pipeline. Being able to monitor and trigger reports that can then be generically executed against pretty much any kind of data quality process that you set up. There's certainly a lot of synergies that we're building into it with regards to how it works with our own data quality tools, but it should fit fairly well, I think, within any existing data quality product or practice that you have set up within your organization.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. This is probably another good one for you. If I had data observability, would I still need data quality?
Yeah, I do think that they complement each other very well. I think data quality deals with what I'd say is much broader set of capabilities with regards to how do I standardize and remediate in data. So in other words, how do I deal with a problem once it occurs? Am I going to run it through some kind of a cleansing process? Am I going to use the data quality tool in order to enrich that data in some way? These are all things that I think have traditionally been dealt with by data quality tools and would continue even in this environment. What observability adds on top of that is the ability to kind of get a more real-time look into your data streams. It's really there to kind of look at the data as it's going through the processing streams and give you information about things such as trends within the data, and with trends against the volume, against the values in the data, as well as observations against business rules as the data is being processed, such that I can use that to trigger alerts and in effect start to automate some of my data quality processes. And I think those two pieces together, I think, are very complementary to each other.
All right, great. Thanks, Scott. If there are any other questions that you guys have, go ahead and put them in the Q&A and we will follow up with you. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on. Can you go to the next slide? So if we do have anyone on that is a current data quality customer, we did want to make sure that you're aware that we are going to be having some webinars specifically for our current data quality customers, Trillium, Spectrum, and Data 360 DQ+. You can take a picture of the QR code and join us to learn about the data integrity suite and how it complements your current data quality product. You can join the appropriate webinar based on your current product line. Thank you. And on to some next steps. So as I mentioned, you can request a demo or even a live trial with the buttons that are in the left menu as well as below the session. You can request a conversation with the Precisely experts, and you can dive into more content on today's topics. We do hope you'll let us know what you thought of the session using the thumbs up button. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Trust 23.